the clock on my computer says 5 past, so let's begin. A reminder, I'm Tony Burns. I'm one of the co-directors for the Centre for the Study of Social and Global Justice. I'll be chairing this evening's session. Our speaker is Antonio Nadal. He's a teacher in the Department of Theory and History of Education, Social Pedagogy and Research Methods and Diagnosis in Education of the Faculty of Educational Sciences of the University of Malaga in southern Spain. Antonio has a master's degree in the management of international cooperation and NGOs from the University of Granada in Spain. He has a PhD in the subject of pedagogy, and his thesis is on the modern school of, forgive my pronunciation, Antonio, Guardia, on the principles of didactics of the current state system and free schools. He's a member of the Ibero-American Pedagogy Network in Colombia and a director of the international research group at UMedNet in Spain. He's also a deputy president of the Spanish state of the Latin American Center for Studies in Pedagogical Epistemology in Cuba. And for a year, he was a research fellow at the with us here in Nottingham at the Center for the Study of Social and Global Justice. He's the author of 4 books and more than 50 book chapters and more than 30 journal articles. And he's also the founder and editor of a journal, the International Journal of Education and Critical Social Analysis. Manye Ferrer Schwarz. I can't forgive me. I'm from Oldham, so my pronunciation's dreadful. The subject of Antonio's talk this evening is pedagogical principles in the training of educational professionals. We have roughly 90 minutes. Our usual custom is that the speaker, in this case Antonio, of course, will speak for around 45 minutes, and then we'll have a similar amount of time for discussion, questions and answers, and we'll finish promptly at 7:30 UK time. Antonio is going to share a PowerPoint with us. We've tested this. There are 1 or 2 YouTube clips in the PowerPoint. When we tested those, we could see the images, but we didn't get the sound. So we've decided that's a problem. The way we're going to deal with it is post the links to the relevant YouTube clips in the chat. So it may be that, well, it will be at certain points in the talk, you will have to click on in the chat on a YouTube link. Okay, I think that's perhaps everything that I need to say. So, Antonio, if you want to put up your PowerPoint, then we can get going.
All right. First of all, thanks so much for all right. Thanks so much for inviting me for this speech. There you have the name of what we are talking about today. I like to, present being quite interactive. So I'm introducing a few videos and a lot of images and a lot of, ideas to understand what's going on, because maybe what's going on in your countries is the same that we are suffering here in Spain. So let's how do you say, let the games begin, like in Olympics. Okay, so first of all is understanding the background. So where are we coming from? Where are we going? So there is a word that could describe what I think is our present, which is dystopia, for so many reasons. Like, for example, there is a genocide going on. Universities, I don't know in your countries, but here in Spain are doing almost nothing. So how could we be, professionals, university teachers, no matter if related to education or whatever, social sciences or even technical sciences, and ignore what's going on? Or can we, just talk about education like being in, in the ambiguity? I think education could be a revolutionary tool, but obviously not nowadays and not in these universities. So we are starting watching this video, which I'm gonna write in the, if I can. I'm gonna write it in the chat so you can watch it. I think it's quite clear. So I write here the link in the chat. So we are coming back in 2 minutes. All right, here we are. Hope you enjoyed that video. You got hungry. So this is an example of what education can make in just a little girl. See, I'm writing there the example of madness, because when I play this video in my classes, they think I'm crazy. This is madness. This is impossible. But it's as simple as it seems. If we have values, if we share them, if we try to change a little bit, not the world, but our world or what surrounds us, it's not that difficult. For example, there you can see an example of another type of music that got really successful in UK, which, well, and other countries, which was Madness. Madness, I really love that band, and it was related to ska music, another type of music. So different options are possible, have been possible, and are possible. But nowadays, the situation is quite difficult. Why? There you can see 3 different real images of May 68 in Paris and in France. There you can see, I don't know if you speak French, but the translation would be like, let's be realistic, let's ask the impossible, abolish the classes society, and also elections are a tool of the bourgeoisie. I don't know how to say that word in English. And it's saying general strike is our weapon, our tool. This type of ideas in nowadays university, I hope I'm mistaken, but are so like old. No matter the situation is same or even worse, because I have never heard this type of ideas as a student, and obviously as a teacher either, for my colleagues. And that's, you know, sad, and it's explaining you what kind of society we are going to. How did I wake up? Through music, not only Madness, but for example, groups and bands like Rage Against the Machine. I learned so much with this group, and preparing this speech. I never knew that this song that I heard so many times was related to the beating of Rodney King in the United States. So, but this is also related to what I think they train you for at the university. Now you do what they told you, and now you're under control. See, like, don't be critical, but we're still gonna see that with a little bit more deepness in a little bit. And for example, this is another example. Rage Against the Machine was from United States. Sepultura was from Brazil. But the first time in my life that I heard about biotechnology was this song. And I never forgot this sentence, like all technology is in the wrong hands. And that's, I think, the problem of what we are talking about today. But music helped me so much. It was the only way that I could wake up. Not high school, no university, no PhD, no master's degree. All that Tony said about me, for me, it's almost worthless. Instead of what I learned and how many I learned from music. And this was also a casualty. When I was in high school, what they really taught me was to hate reading, to hate literature, history, Latin, everything, because I had to memorize everything and not understanding anything. So that's how I got to university, going there just to be there, not knowing really what to study. But I thought pedagogy could be a good option. But I never liked really anything because, for example, I might wanted to be a journalist, but what kind of journal was gonna hire me? None. So when I was 18, I had to read 3 books for a subject, the same subject that I teach now, which is theory of education. And I found a few books at home, and this was one of them. I didn't know about this book. I saw it was a little one, so I couldn't spend a lot of time reading. So I chose this one. But the teacher told me that all the rest of the books were fine, but this one was not fine. And that surprised me. And obviously, not for his job subject, but in the future, I read this book. He told me that such an idol, which is Paulo Freire, was a good one to read. But I couldn't understand almost anything because I was 18. I didn't know anything about the political situation of Brazil or almost anything about politics because they don't teach us nothing about politics here at high school. So I learned the concept that you can read up there, consumer intellectuals, because in the second year of my studies, I wanted to research about Paulo Freire because I didn't know why it was so important. And I discovered that he'd been under the, getting his money from the World Council of Churches, which is not, let's say, a progressive organization. And then he was supposed to be fighting for freedom, but then all the universities that were not supporting freedom at all were declaring him or even hiring him. They were declaring him Dr. Honoris Causa or hiring him. And that was surprising for me because those who really fight for freedom are not getting prizes, are not getting supported by the universities of the system, but are getting like killed because the one I studied, Francisco Ferrer Guardia, was condemned to death and killed in 1909 in Barcelona. So I thought this guy was really interesting. So in my third year of studies, I got the opportunity to research about this guy 3 years after I started university. For me, one of the most important sentences that I learned from this author and this book was the one that you can see there. To educate is to tame, to train, to domesticate. I was really interested in the word domesticate. There you can see the door of the modern school in Barcelona. And the second image is because the founder of the modern school, Francisco Ferrer Guardia, he also founded a working class newspaper, which name was the General Strike. And as the school, the newspaper was forbidden. And also a really revolutionary thing or action that he took was to organize a kids demonstration and a snack in Barcelona the same day of the Corpus Christi demonstration. That was a huge provocation for the Spanish Catholic Church and the system. 3 years after that was when they kill him. But the most important thing of this author is that it's not only about words, it's not only about classes, it's about revolution. A revolution takes a lot of actions. Okay, this is a little, review of this school where you could learn that science, critical science, was really important in a Spanish state that was absolutely controlled by Catholic religion. And they were teaching that property is theft, authority is not the tool, justice is controlled by the power, by the state. They were teaching that border nations, flags, and patriotism is not good. You should question everything. And they did so many things. They started to translate books from Kropotkin and so many other revolutionary authors and characters. That's how I started, not only through music, but when I didn't pay attention to what my first teacher told me about not reading this book. Because I don't like to follow the typical order, I'm giving you the conclusion of this in the middle of the speech. Because I was there in Nottingham, and then I received a few phone calls that I couldn't recognize. It was full numbers, and I didn't even get it. But I have an email saying that I have 3 days to sign my contract as university professor. I have never been university teacher. I had my life in UK, and that's the training you have to become a teacher, and not a simple teacher, but a master's degree teacher. So I didn't really know what to do. I have to change my whole life. Lucky me, it was Halloween, which is holiday in Spain. So I got a few more days to prepare. But obviously, when I got there, I didn't know anything about researching. I didn't know how to promote critical thinking between my students who were preparing to become counselors at the schools and high school. Obviously, no one taught me to, control or be good in public speaking. I didn't know anything about that. And obviously, I didn't know how to evaluate my students because I have never done that before. So I didn't have any training at all to become a university teacher. This is what I started to hear. It's like an old song that says, follow the leader, 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 follow the leader. But it was about that, pragmatism. Follow the established path. Do not question what is there. Don't do anything that might generate mess or protest. Don't receive any complaint from the students. If you pass everyone, you won't have any problem. So if you see the statistics in my faculty, like 95% of students pass no matter what degree they study. So the point was go with the flow, go with tradition, don't try to change anything, just be normal. But who told me what was normalization? It was Foucault, but no teacher told me about Foucault. I wanted to teach a lot about Foucault, but I didn't know nothing. I didn't have any book. But for me, it was really important. So as so many other things that they hire for my knowledge, it was Foucault. And this was really important for me. And also to teach students that they don't have to be normal. They don't have to be under normalizations. For example, the first time that I could read, besides the modern school, that exams are no good for learning or for evaluating, was with Discipline and Punish from Foucault. And I knew about so many concepts for Foucault that I couldn't believe, but I still was new to teach about that. And also the dichotomy, and not only the dichotomy, but the dichotomical thinking was something quite clear where I was living and working. Like you can be left wing, right wing, If you are in Manchester, you can be Manchester United follower or Manchester City, whatever, or religious, non-religious, but you have to get in a position related to this. And that's how recently I learned about this, for me, really sad expression, which is epistemological and theoretical unity. This year, because a casualty, I am the coordinator of the subject of all the degrees of all the primary school degree, subject theory of education. And I was the coordinator of the teaching guide. And I wanted to remove a lot of things and add different things, like the importance of technology in theory of education and in everything. No matter what subject I will teach, I will talk about technology because I think it's quite important. And one teacher told me not to break the epistemological and theoretical unity of my department, something that obviously I didn't follow. Why? For example, if you see there, one other book that I found by a casualty is a really old one, The Ignorant Schoolmaster by Jacques Rancière. And one important lesson that I learned from that book is that you cannot teach what you don't know. It's right impossible. So if I have colleagues without critical thinking, how are they going to teach it? It's impossible. They don't practice it in their lives. They just go there, take their car, from the car to the class, from the class to the car, and from their car to their homes. Where do you get that critical thinking? Reading Twitter? Probably not. Also, by a casualty, I found the doctoral thesis when I was also with mine about Montessori being a fascist. But here and in so many other places, like Montessori is an idol, Maria Montessori, but she was a fascist, not when she was 15, when she was 50. And she was the leading character of the Mussolini schools. Why don't they teach that? Instead of teaching that Montessori was kind of a god or something like that. With Asperger, the same happened to me. And every time I teach this to kids, they got so surprised. But they won't hear this again, never again, because their teachers, in some cases, were my teachers, and they never talk about anything that we are talking today. For example, one of the options I give them is reading this book, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now, which make them really surprised. But I really think that we have to see these videos, which are short, but for me are a little bit impressing. So let's watch them. I'm gonna write both of them here in the chat. So hope you enjoy.
So I don't know about everybody else, Antonio, but I've managed to watch them both now.
All right. So let's continue. Hope you enjoy. We can have a discussion about these two videos afterwards. But anyway, these are two typical ones that I play in classes because obviously it's a theater, but it's a easy way. Both of them are a theater, and obviously I'm not a Netflix commercial, but I in one point of the Great Hack one, there is like a ranking of these companies that are indoctrinating and controlling our thinking. Obviously nothing is going to happen to Zuckerberg, as you might know. All right, let's go. Are you seeing my PowerPoint, right? You're seeing it? Yes or no?
No, you need to put it back up again, I think.
All right, so let's go. Wait.
But sometimes the bar at the bottom disappears, doesn't it? I find when I move my cursor, it reappears, and then you can see the green share button in the middle of the bar.
All right, let's go. Wait a second. Sharing a screen. Here we go. So, sorry.
That's it.
Yeah. So, after watching this, all right, this is about the critical thinking and understanding what's going on. And what's going on, it's, right there. After so many years of, the government of Democrats, Social Democrats, and so many things, we could see that this is the result. And what's going on right now in the United States is quite scary, that a guy, no matter how powerful is, does the nasty salutation so easily. And what's going on, how many people they are removing. I don't know if you have watched The Handmaid's Tale, but this reminds me a lot to what's going on there in the United States and also everywhere, because almost nobody is complaining about what's going on. But for example, like politics, is only if you are teaching this type of degree, you are allowed to talk. In education, they say, don't talk about politics. I talk about politics all the time, obviously, because politics are those who design the education that we have at the schools, high schools, and university. And I think it's quite serious what's going on after so many years of tolerance to this type of people who now are more powerful, not than ever, obviously, but, or maybe yes, well, it's difficult to measure. But this type of examples are, for me, quite, impressive. Preparing this speech, I found out this and so many other things. But this one is about University of Stanford, and those are Nazis. I mean, there is no discussion. They don't hire or they don't appear to be any other thing than Nazis. You have so many information, pictures, and what you see there, it's reality. This is what's going on, and it's quite scary, at least from my point of view. Okay, we were talking about pragmatism, and now we're gonna talk about utopia. Not that utopia, but a little bit. Like, for example, books talking about academic inbreeding. That, for me, that concept goes a little bit further than being studying in your faculty and finally ending up working there. It's about, I don't know the translator into English, but it's about getting your pets there. I mean, you have to think as your teachers. You have to research what your teachers say, think, believe. Then, obviously, never, ever anything is going to change. It's like that. Besides, you have that publisher Paris that I didn't know before being a teacher. Becoming a teacher is when I started to learn what is to be a teacher, not before, which I think is a big mistake. I always knew that sentence, that political correctness is tyranny with manners. Obviously, I don't support Charlton Heston. And for this speech, I was preparing how many, agreements there were between the Rifle Association and universities, but it was gonna take me too long, this speech of today. Okay, so here is starting to understand what's going on. What is Clarivate and Elsevier, where we are obligated to publish. We are talking about business. There is a electronic music song which says all the time, let's get down business. This is all about business. This is about monopoly. This is about something that is also really scary. This is for me dystopia, when I found out that I have to publish in these journals. So, but still, the one of the left is Clarivate, and the one of the right is Elsevier. This is primary sources. This is what they are. This is taken from their websites. So, this is what is not there on their website. These are the companies who own these other companies. So, do you think these people want a better world or business, no matter the consequences of it? Like I showed you at the beginning, the Sepultura song, the problem is they have the science. And so they have a huge business that we are going to see in a while. And we are obligated to publish in these journals, at least in Spain and so many other countries too. And this is an example of what they want and what their ideology is. Obviously, ethnocentrism, because these are the owners of the journals. But you can see there, for example, if you see number 7 and you see number 10, for me, it's one clear example of what type of education and related to what is what they want. But still, I wanted to go a little further. So I went to the first journals for you to show you. Obviously, the companies that own the journals and the ideology. You can see there what they really want to research. Surprisingly or not that surprising, for example, the fourth one, strategic organization, which seems not to be a education journal, but is in the top 10 ranking. It was talking about Huawei, which is quite strange, but obviously they're talking about remote robots, similarity, measuring, everything from my point of view related to that normalization that Foucault was talking about. Then what I learned when I was a teacher is that a lot of my colleagues had articles published in a journal called Sustainability. So I thought I could be able to publish in Sustainability. Then I found that it has that concept, article processing charge, and I didn't know that that account of money is around, I don't know in pounds, but probably 2,400 pounds, and it's a little bit more in euros. So I realized that those who had published there, they were collaborating with predatory journals that I didn't know what it was. I was, in a competition where I was quite back of those leaders that knew how all of this was working. But I still got lucky again because I started to book. That book is a novel, Michael Crichton, but it's quite scary. It's a dystopian book. But in the end of the book, even though it's a novel, it has a bibliography that is absolutely scary about real cases of craziness in science. I also read that book down there that I found the name of the book in French. I got it in Spanish, but I couldn't find that book in English. I don't know if it's published or not. The translation would be like the layers of the genetics. It really impressed me. It was published, at least in Spain, 2001. And also, like, I learned a lot from the Black Mirror series. I don't know if you know it. And that one, John is author, is teaching us how they can control your whole life through social media. Sorry, I got this one. Well, okay, because I'm always out of time. This one is about corruption in the most important universities in the United States. It's really interesting. I mean, it's not amazing. Netflix is not fighting for a better world or for a revolution, but it's quite interesting. I don't know why that book is there, because it's gonna be here. Something, let's not say it's about to change, but some people is starting to publish, claim a little bit about what's going on. That's a book about it, criticizing what's going on right now. We have more examples like here, but at least we have examples worldwide. That one is a book published in Brazil. The other one is published in Spain. And we really need to know that a lot of people, or almost everyone, is getting conscious of what's going on. But if you are part of the problem, obviously you don't want to change the problem because you are getting rich and you are getting a position because of this corrupted system. We don't have a lot of time, but I can give you this presentation afterwards, because now it's a brand new documentary about German really elite research institution. This was published like 10 days ago. I have already contact with them, trying to publish what they have, research about, which so far I think is only a video. There you have another example of a book against what's going on, related, in this case, about gender. These two images are related to sexual harassment. Down there you have a real painting about this guy, Boaventura de Sousa, which was really important in sociology. There in England, you got that Sarah Ahmed complaint. And here is an example of what can happen at universities, with this sample of a Basque country, of a private university that fired a teacher because he was anti-capitalist. It's even harder to be anti-capitalist in degrees like engineering, which was, if I'm not mistaken, this case. This was also quite impressive for me, that I found out preparing this speech. I didn't know about this, but and also, as you can see, there are a lot of different knowledge areas. We have talked about a lot of them, and now it's about archaeology. But for example, at my university, the leading position related to gender equality is an archaeologist. Something quite strange from my point of view, because if you don't have training, at least training how, or public, or publication, researching. Okay, this is hope. From my point of view, this is hope, but still we are talking about the University of Utrecht. So, but this was really, inspiring for me and interesting. That happened years ago, and that they did, as far as I'm concerned, they didn't change that policy. And, this made me really happy. Obviously, this has consequences, but these people started not caring about them. And this is an example. Why do you have to be in these rankings? What are they useful for? Are they going to give you more public money if you are in this ranking? Okay, why don't you change that rule? This is about it. This university is an example for me. I don't know how they train teachers. I don't know a lot of things, but this was a good idea. But if you see up there, this was published in Science Business. We are talking about science, maybe not that much about business. This is something quite new about Spain. It's not necessarily a good news, but it's something, but just something, because if you see down there, publishers, mostly Clarivate and Elsevier, are getting so much money for governments. There you have 170 millions from Spanish state just for them to give access. And even though you have to pay in a lot of journals to publish still. So yeah. And this is what's going on now. That's a place in England where is the registered office of Oxbridge Publishing House, a mixture of Oxford and Cambridge. And this is getting the power of everything. And I'm giving you a shocking example that I knew last Friday through Dominican Republic colleagues. I don't know if you knew this journal. I always, since I became a teacher, I knew that I should publish here because it was the #1 in cultural studies, which they don't publish about, communication, the ninth journal in the world, and the #1 in cultural studies and the 25th in education. This was a really, really important journal. I started to get critical. I found this author, Ioannidis, a Greek one, I think. He started to publish what was going on, and I realized that I was fighting with these people. Teachers with ethics are fighting with these people, which was, kind of difficult. This is an example of one of them that got caught. This guy was publishing a study every 37 hours. This is crazy, but still, they didn't take any measure against them till he started to publish like he was working for Russia or Saudi Arabia. So this is crazy. So I wrote an article about that Comunicar journal like 3 years ago, and I was really happy about it. And then this happened. This is what I found out last Friday. Comunicar, the journal that you have seen, is no longer in Scopus and Web of Science, from being the #1 to not being there. You know why? This company bought that journal. Now it's property. And I don't know why Web of Science and Scopus, even though they are a huge business right now, are not having a good relation with this funny company called Oxbridge. Which I think it's, kind of a good news, even though the one that I showed you, sustainability, and all of them from this company, which are also predatory journals, are still in Scopus and GCR. And in Scopus, today I found out that they are Q1. So those are not good news. Finally, I strongly recommend for your researchers to understand what is virtual ethnography. It helped me a lot to become a good researcher, being able to be at home. For example, this is an example of what I did, which is, from my point of view, one of the most important articles, because I started to research how the modern school reached all the world. For example, I got these primary sources from Brazil. So there you have the article that took me 2.5 years to get published. And that there is another resource, the modern school movement in the United States, and also flags of countries where there were modern schools, which was really important. And this was never in my training as a future teacher. This is a utopia, absolutely. This is our journal that we created from nothing. Luckily, we already have an article from Tony Burns. Hopefully, we might have a lot of articles from all of you, because we love critical thinking. And instead of just blaming and complaining, let's try to, change everything. Obviously, being there, because right now we have to be in Web of Science and in Scopus. We have already applied for it and probably will be there soon. That doesn't mean that we support that, or we, are gonna be comfortable with the system, but we really want to support really critical researchers, revolutionary scientists. Yeah, so that was it. I think I got the correct time. That's me.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Antonio. That's terrific. Tour de force. I really enjoyed that. That was really good. Perhaps if you switch off the presentation, then we can
Yeah,
we can see everybody and everybody else. It would be great if you could switch on your cameras. Then we actually have a sort of seminar feel to the proceedings. Plenty to talk about there, of course. So I shall throw it open to discussion and questions. If you could raise your hand electronically, then I could see it. That would be helpful. Who's going to go first? Amanda, thank you very much. That's very helpful.
I was going to wait, but Antonio, thank you very much for that. It was a cool glass of water after a really crappy day. I'm at a post 92 institution, which is going through another round of restructuring. It's a third in the last 15 years, and the kind of institution I think this place wants to be left with, the type of instruction, what they think a university is about, is really terrifying. So we basically been told that our students are meant to feed the algorithm, and to feed AI, and that AI is here to stay. They don't need to worry about learning how to write or think critically anymore. We have an employability policy that was signed off on by Unilever and Coca-Cola, which doesn't have the term critical thinking in it, because apparently that's a step too far for our kind of students, mostly working class, mostly first generation to university. And for me, the post-92s in the UK were a place where working class people can come in and actually do really radical things, in theory. I mean, I'm not saying it always happens, but my feeling is that we have to find a place to rebuild somewhere outside of the system, and I don't know whether you have any thoughts on how to do that. I mean, I think, messing with the metrics in, KPIs and from a publishing standpoint is great. And I mean, the things that you were talking about are, the asset stripping of academic journals is horrific, but I'm worried about the actual pedagogical side of it as well, which I know you were addressing. But yeah, are there any other experiences that you could, any signs of life outside of the neoliberal university that you can speak to? Thanks.
So far, like the modern school was out of the system, was not public or private. It was an example, it's an old one. Right now, my doctoral thesis was about free schools, but free schools are not the same thing as in United Kingdom. There are a lot of schools worldwide that work as they want, which is a little bit difficult because still you have to have the certificate to become whatever, your primary school, your secondary school degree, but still they exist. And we have, from my point of view, we have to learn a lot. And I write about that in my last book. about what's going on in South America, Central America, and in Mexico. When I read what they do in, in Chiapas and so many other places, I learn a lot, how they organize, how they work, how they fight, sometimes not having anything, see? We have to, conquer our spaces. Like, for example, let me see in a second, I'm gonna share a screen, but just a second. I organizing this course. This is the first time I do anything like this. This is gonna be helpful for everyone, free. We are talking about revolutionary character. Probably the most known is Louise Michel, the woman in charge of schools in French Commune. The other one was a revolutionary man in Spain, but the other three speeches are about education in Sahara, in the Bronx, in the United States, from a teacher from there, in Chile about the kind of revolution that took place only 3 years ago, and how university students, teachers were, organizing. It's really interesting. Obviously, it's difficult to keep that, but it's going to be really interesting. And if you remember 3 years ago about what was going on in Chile, it's really important. But the point is to get together, like, because the problems that you are talking about, your creepy day, I had so many creepy days in the past, but now I have controlled the situation. Now I'm gonna become, well, I have already a fixed position. Now I can, lead doctoral thesis. Now I can be more free than ever, no matter what they try to do against me. Now, with my position, I don't even need to publish anymore. See, so it's really important to reach this position, and we need to have the tools for it. For example, we don't have anything like CSSGJ here in Spain, but it's a good thing to have it. Now I'm creating something more little. Yeah, we have to have a place for revolutionary people, for them to be able to be in academia, to be able to publish against Coca-Cola, Unilever. We have this journal. We need to have publishers. We can make it. I think we can make it because I'm an example of it. I'm against everything that surrounds me in my faculty. They don't like me. I don't like them. They cannot do anything anymore against me. Sorry. So if they don't like to see me, I don't like to see them either. So it's that easy.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Amanda. And of course, you're quite right. I mean, the centre, our centre, is intended to bring like-minded people globally together. And so what you've done today is a classic example of one of the things, anyway, that can be done. And that's part of the rationale, of course, for the effort that we're putting into sustaining the Centre for the Study of Social and Global Justice. So, Andreas, you have a question.
Yeah, a couple of observations and a question. So thanks a lot, Antonio. That was really a great presentation, reminding us of the importance, of critical thinking and what education should really be about. You said for you, teaching education has to be about politics. Now I'm working in the School of Politics and International Relations, and in a way, everything is about politics. But actually, if I look at how a lot of teaching is actually being carried out in our school, there's a lot of politics without politics. Yeah, so there's people learn about party systems and elections, and they're being taught to look from the outside into this kind of objective developments out there and to try to identify some realities. Yeah, so it's not just about teaching politics, but it's also a matter about how we teach politics And I think quite a lot of colleagues actually have bought into this kind of teaching politics without politics. And that, of course, then makes it not very amenable for any critical thinking. And I think, Amanda, you've, of course, correctly referred to these kind of structural constraints of how education in the UK is currently being transformed. And I think the pressures become ever higher. And that's also one of the reasons for why we as CSSGJ did go independent, because our university wanted to monitor ever more, control what kind of seminars we run. And there was lesser and lesser money available to fund the activity. So we did go independent. But we do that, but all the efforts we put in are, of course, voluntary. And we do that happily, because I think that that's a good initiative to do. But of course, there are also limits, because we still have the day job, which require all kinds of other things, and that makes it difficult. And we had here in Lincoln, there was an alternative university where academics gave up their own free time and taught courses in the evening. But in the end, it just proved to be too much for these colleagues to work their full-time job and to be voluntarily involved. So the question really is, so we want to do this alternative, more critical focused education and offer courses along this line, but how can we put that on a sustainable basis while all the other pressures are also ongoing?
From my point of view, there are a lot of laws and a lot of ways to do almost what we want to do. Like, I don't know how many examples I could give you, but for example, I found that one of the most important journals of education was promoting a girl, which is not even a university teacher, who was just writing against alternative education. That was her goal, saying alternative education is false. I don't know why. Well, I know because this journal wanted to, promote that. What did I do? I wrote an article against her and against the publication, and I sent this article to them. I sent this article July 30 or 31, right before the vacation here in Malaga or in Spain. Even being holiday, it took 4 days for them to refuse this article. What did I do? I found a Q2 journal from Venezuela. So I sent the article and it got published right away. So we have to, touch a lot of, or open a lot of doors, be able to talk to colleagues, be able to organize, because right now, my last 2 books, they are quite radical. And they are published by the #1 publisher in Spain. I was really lucky. And they even told me that I was brave. They congratulate me. It was quite surprising for me. Obviously, they didn't let me for every book to be more than 100 pages, because that's what they wanted. But I'm quite happy. And I think if we, what Kropotkin wrote, the mutual aid is so important, to know where to publish, to know where to go, to know our rights, to organize. I don't know you there, but here our unions are no good. I always telling my colleagues, we have to, have a union. If there is none, we should do it. That's what I did with the journal. The journal is not also a part of the University of Malaga. The researching group that I have is not a part of the University of Malaga. That way, I'm kind of free. Obviously, it's not easy to get in Web of Science, but for example, right now, we are indexed in, I think, every single database of Germany. And we are in Latindex, which is one of the most important in Latin America. And we are getting everywhere. How? With commitment, with even rage, with, yeah, because sometimes it's so boring, it's so bureaucratic, everything, but we are there. We need everyone. We obviously need CSGJ. We need colleagues worldwide, from South America, from everywhere. And yeah, I think if publishing is the most important thing, at least in Spain, because if you publish, I mean, your whole degree is 6 points. 2 Q1 articles is 4 points per each. So you have, it's more important your articles than your degree, your articles than your PhD. I mean, teaching 1 year at the university is 3 points, and this one article is more important. So let's organize to, no matter, or remove, as the University of Utrecht, remove JCR, remove Web of Science, Elsevier, or be there. I obviously support getting away from this mafia, because for me it's a mafia. But if we can't so far, okay, let's play the game.
Yeah, life always involves at least some compromises, doesn't it? So Nishito, you've been waiting very patiently. So would you like to ask your question now?
Thank you so much. My question is more related to independent researchers that don't really get the word out. Many of these individuals cannot be associated with certain universities. I know quite a few who have been threatened for the kind of voice that they have. With the growing increase in journals not actually publishing their voice and a requirement to mention the university that they're from, are there journals, or does your journal, or are there any places that they can actually get their word out? Because they do come from a critical source of thinking. It's just that it is not the right voice that the journal would like to publish.
For example, in my case, everything that I researched about gender was score 0. What I researched about transsexuality was score 0. Even being in CSGJ for 1 year was score 0 in my department, and almost in every department in my faculty, but not for the state. When you reach the state, and when you reach, I don't know in your countries, but when you reach the evaluation of the state, they are not against you. They are just technical, and they have to do their job. They do it good. That's a Q1. This is a good publisher. This is the article. They don't get, but here in my job, they complain because I didn't go to their congresses. I didn't quote them. I didn't have any relation to them, but that was not anything mandatory. So I didn't do it. I follow their rules. I don't even like the rules, but they invented rules for me, which was obviously not nice. And I have to fight. Like, those people were presenting like 30 merits. I was presenting 300 because 90% of my merits were gonna score 0, but I still got it. So obviously in so many places was so difficult, or even more, or even impossible, but you still have to find somewhere a colleague. And I think it's possible. It's really difficult. It was difficult for me, but, and also those more kind of revolutionary teachers are about to retire in my faculty. Those new teachers are being bureaucratic experts like I am, because I am one of them. Otherwise, I couldn't be there. So we need to understand their rules, and we need to play their chess game. We need to, attack their kings and queens with our power, with whatever we have. Obviously, it's difficult, but we have to. I think we have to. We shouldn't leave the science and the university for this far right, for these people who always control it, but now it's getting more clear than a long time ago.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. Andreas, have you put your hand up again?
directly in response to that, Antonio,
Yeah,
is there not a danger? Is there not a danger that if we play according to their rules, which they are actually constantly changing, at least in the UK here at the moment, that we are ultimately being constrained within their system and their rules? And yeah, so we can play it, and perhaps that allows us a bit of room of maneuver, but ultimately it's not going to change the education system as a whole. Whereas if I understood you correctly, I thought you were much more about more fundamental transformation of how education is organized at the moment. I'm not sure I can see how that's possible by playing within their rules.
When revolution started here in Spain, it was because of two unions, the Marxist one and the anarchist one. They started to gather to get people, and that's what we need to know. I remember the Occupy Wall Street movement. They were saying we are 99%. That might not be the reality of academia, but I think there are a lot of people wanting to change it. I want to think that, and I'm reading about it, and I'm getting, more articles, not more journals, but more articles. And every year I'm listening to high school teachers, primary school teachers that really want to do something different, and they do it. But we need to get together worldwide, because globalization can only be attacked through a, global thing.
So do we have any more questions? If not, I could ask something, or perhaps make an observation. On the critical thinking side of things, I've got an anecdote, actually. I've got a daughter who's now at university, but she did, in the English education system, we have this thing called A levels and special levels. And when she was at school in the sixth form, she did a special level course in critical thinking. But this no longer exists. So the previous Tory government, Michael Gove, the then education secretary, closed it down, because we don't want people thinking critically. Hannah Arendt wrote a book called Thinking, The Life of the Mind, and one of the volumes is called Thinking. So she didn't make a distinction between thinking critically and just plain thinking. If you weren't thinking critically, then you're not thinking at all. I think that's basically what she thought. So it's clearly a political significance to actually close down an educational subject which is supposed to be introducing students to the ideas and the principles associated with critical thinking. That's not really a question. That's just an observation. I wonder, could you show this slide? One of your slides had Martin Luther King on it. There was a nice quote about passivity and the political significance of passivity. And I wonder, could you put that up again? Or? I can't hear you, actually, Antonio. Have you got your...
Yeah, here we go. Can you see it?
Yes, there we are. Without justice, there can be no peace. He who passively, well, he, it's gendered language, so they who passively accept evil are as much involved in it as those who help to perpetrate it. Well, this is a big thing for me. I've got this idea that it's another way of saying what you don't criticize or condemn, you condone. But there's no sitting on the fence, and this touches on the point that Andreas made about so-called political science in inverted commas and the alleged objectivity that one's supposed to create and sustain as a student of politics if you're going to be scientific in your approach. And I mean, you mentioned genocide at the beginning of your talk, and you obviously had in mind what's happening in Gaza. And I'm just very keen on this idea there that what you don't condemn or criticize, you do condone. And there's no sitting on the fence. You've got to take sides. The question is, which side do you take? And when you talking to your students. I'm retired now, but certainly you need to be committed, I think, rather than this pseudo objectivity that some people associate with political science. So I think Martin Luther King's quote there captures that very, very well. Has implications, of course, for news reporting as well. In this country, the BBC prides itself on being objective and impartial. And of course, it wouldn't dream of criticizing what the Israeli state's doing in Gaza. But in my opinion, that is pseudo-objectivity, and it is politically significant pseudo-objectivity as well. I find that outrageous, actually. So I'm sorry, that's not really the question either, is it? My apologies, I'm having a rant, sorry.
No, I was really, it was really easy for me to be there in CSSGJ because I could talk about politics, but not here in Spain because in education, like they consider politics another thing. Even they publish a book saying education is politics. But so far, I teach theory of education. How would I introduce what's going on in Gaza for people for 17 and 18 years old that don't know nothing? The first day of class, it was not the first day, the third day of class, I asked someone to get a bottle of to get a bottle of water and throw it away. Then I asked for 2 volunteers to get chairs and throw them away. And I told them, imagine that's your water, imagine that's your houses. And now let's face reality. Then I got invited a Gaza student, which was my student, and she gave them an impressive speech that was really, really hard, obviously, for the student from Gaza, obviously, and for my students. Always primary sources, see? And this student was about to be supported by our university because we are also in another thing called Teachers for Palestine. They never supported them. They never supported her. When she came, they take pictures of her saying, University of Malaga is supporting Gaza students. Then they never did anything else for her. So we need to show reality, and that was the best way to talk about Gaza. Obviously, it's not easy to have this opportunity, and it was lucky me that I had a Gaza student 2 years ago, and she go through Egypt, come back to Spain. But I always try to show the hardness of everything without making them scary, because they are not used to anything related to reality. Like, for example, this year I have my record of German students. They didn't like me because not everything was like a square. They told me they were used to have a huge crowded class with someone just talking or using a PowerPoint. I don't use any PowerPoint in my classes. I let them talk all the time. I make them questions all the time, present videos, do activity, make them make theater, so many things. They cannot get bored. They cannot get their phones. It's impossible because I'm gonna ask you something, but not making you feel anxiety or bad, because I tell them there are not correct or incorrect answers. There are a lot of ways to do it, but still for the German audience was really hard for some kind of students, because you have been in high schools and schools where you cannot participate. Your opinion is useless, and you just have to follow a book. We don't have a book.
It's quite interesting into the well, the concept of education, when you think about it, obviously what we're doing when we, what does this involve? If it doesn't involve critical thinking, then is it education? Well, it's something else. But as you say, it's discipline or training or taming but not education. So there's a great deal turns, I think, on the meaning of the word and the effort that different people have to claim it. I think that which I'm quite interested in. Now, Oliver, I don't know if you want to ask you a question or do you want me to repeat it? I mean, presumably you're still there. Yeah. You've written in the chat something.
It wasn't a particularly. I was just reflecting. The question of is at what point is protest just also a form of being complicit, right? You know, I mean, I remember reading Ulrike Meinhof, you know, that controversial German writer. She had this famous quote, protest is when I say I don't like something, resistance is when I put an end to what I don't like. And I just found that distinction interesting, you know.
Mm.
Luigi Mangione wrote Defend, Depose, and Deny, or something like that. Maybe it was too radical, but here in Spain, at least we are lucky because critical thinking is almost in every educational law. So we have that option. Obviously, the system is not promoting critical thinking. So if you don't have critical teachers, how are you going to make or critical books? How are you going to promote critical thinking? But in almost every law is there. So I tell the students, the law might not be against you, but you can use it. And I'm using it. I'm trying to, we have different teachers that are really bad. One of them is homophobic, racist, classist, far-right teacher, disgusting, annoying. I'm trying to get him fired, and it's getting really hard. But anyway, I think it's possible, and Oliver Dodd, as Oliver said, protest obviously is not the only thing. We have to organize. It's not only to go against, it's to, you know, build an alternative or something. They have done it in the past, so I'm afraid we can do it nowadays. I think hope is a really good engine, and I would like to listen to all of them that have not said anything, like Sinem or Helen.
Helen, you've got your head above the parapet there. You've been caught out. Do you want to say anything? I think, have you got your mic switched off? You need to switch your mic on if you want to say something.
Yes.
No, you're still switched off. I can see that's it. Yeah.
Right. I've got it. So, no, I didn't particularly want to say anything actually. Just really interesting listening and to listen to everybody's.
You made the mistake of switching your camera on. That's you get.
I did, didn't I? Yes. So no, all I would say was sort of, well, I'm retired now, but I was teaching in a school of education. I was in higher education, and just, if you like, you know, enjoy listening to these because it's a way of still keeping in touch and still keeping, you know, keeping my brain alert. But particularly actually concerned around the issues of critical thinking. And okay, just sort of maybe perhaps slightly anecdotal, but as I say, in School of Education, I was working with a wide age group. Well, sorry, training teachers across a wide age group, and one of the programs approaches we used was the philosophy for the P4C, the philosophy for children. So, which is very much aimed at very, very young children and developing critical thinking. So that I'll just sort of throw that one into the mix, as that's something that I used to teach my students or encourage my students to use.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because I suppose we do tend to think of teaching critical thinking it's for sort of for older teenagers rather than for 4 or 5 year olds, but it's a little bit like teaching a foreign language, I suppose. They do start them early and get them into the habit, and eventually they fly on their own, as it were. Sort of.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely true, and they can, and certainly 4-year-olds, if given the support and given the encouragement and given, I was going to say the expectation, that's not quite the right word, but if it's part of what they do, actually that video clip you showed at the very beginning of that child eating the broccoli, there's a parallel there, because if they get used to questioning and thinking at a very young age, it's what they do. It's nothing unusual. It's sort of part of the way they are.
Yeah.
And
okay, thank you for that.
You're very, very welcome. Okay, thank you.
Antonio, do you want to comment? I don't know.
No one is retired to publish in our journal. You are more than invited for it. We will love it. And also, I didn't mention the rest because I couldn't see it, but now I can see more people there that I would love to listen to. Because, for example, in my classes, I try everyone to talk, but not always is possible because every year is getting worse. Anxiety problems, self-esteem problems, bullying problems. Every year is getting harder to teach because they come with biggest problems. And some of them I never knew. Like there is something that I learned this year, which is high sensibility people, which I didn't know what it was. So every time I'm listening to more and more, disorders. I don't like to call it disorders, but like, for example, the first activity I do is about telling their story of schooling. And this year, even with the Erasmus, it got really hard. Different students started to cry, talking about really hard stories of bullying, anxiety. And it was, coming to class started to become a nightmare because you didn't want to do anything after class after seeing so many people crying. And this is crazy. And every year, maybe I'm not doing this activity in a course because the Erasmus were so shocked. And I was shocked because every year a few people cry, but this year was the worst.
Antonio, what exactly did you ask them to do?
I tell them, because it's theory of education, I tell them to explain what they've been through, no matter if it was good or wrong. So
just that question. Okay.
Yeah. But what they usually say is I have to memorize, have exams, have a teacher talking all the time, a textbook and everything. But then what they really remember were really bad things, really, really bad things.
That's quite interesting. Actually, there's a sort of analogy between critical thinking and critical speaking. Of course, to speak critically, you've got to be able to speak. So if you lack the skills and the encouragement from an early age, a very early age, to speak publicly, then that's going to be a problem.
I tell them about the importance of primary sources, and I'm not telling them what's going on in high schools. You are going to tell them because you just came back. You just came from these high schools. So tell them what's going on there. There is no better expert than you. So mixing all of this is quite impressive. Quite impressive.
Right. Well, we've run out of time, I'm afraid. I think we should thank Antonio for an excellent, stimulating talk.